Hello, children. Just kidding. It's a little dark. Let's change the lighting up just a wee bit. There, that's a little bit better, and you can actually see my beautiful face. Just kidding. What is up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Bring Our Light Productions. This is episode 10. Can you believe it? 10. One of these days I'm gonna make an intro to show, but until then, let's shed some light on the situation. So in today's video, we're going to be going through Genesis chapter 4 through Genesis chapter 11. There's 3 main stories in these 7 chapters. And the reason we're going through 3 stories in one video is because I've come to the realization that if I did one video on every story that's in the Bible, I would be doing videos on the Bible for like the next 10 years. Maybe not quite that long, but you know. So to make good use of y'all's time in watching these videos, I am going to be splitting the videos of my Bible reading series up into sections. So instead of doing a video per chapter or a video per story, we're going to be kind of lumping some stories and several chapters into each other. Alright, so without further ado, let's get into it. But first, what do y'all think of the new place, the new filming area? You like it? This is one of the things I was working on. This is one of the reasons why it's been it was like 4 weeks since my last video. The last video I updated, the 4th of July special, the Food for Thought, episode 9. I actually filmed that like right around 4th of July, and I was still in my bedroom in my little corner studio with everything. So we've since moved up to my library, where this is just my filming space, my editing suite, I guess, with my computer and everything are downstairs. So it's completely separated, so now I should just be able to turn the camera on, turn the lights on, turn the mic on, and record. It won't take me that long to set stuff up, so it's kind of cutting down on the excuses I have for not making videos. Enough about the studio, let's dig into the Bible. So today we're going to be going through Genesis chapter 4 through Genesis chapter 11. We're going to be skipping most of Genesis chapter 5 and I believe Genesis chapter 10. Those are mostly genealogies, which don't really play a huge part in the stories. So after the fall of man in my last Bible reading series video, what you can watch here, or maybe it's here, depends on which side the tag pops up on. It's kind of a long video. It's like 20 minutes or so. So, make sure you have some popcorn and a drink, and you might need a Kleenex because it gets kind of emotional. I don't. The story does, just clarifying. That video is kind of what made me decide to split this up into sections instead of doing a video per story. Anyway, back to the point, Josiah. So after the fall of man in Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve have children. This was kind of to be expected, y'all. You're the only 2 people on earth. It was bound to happen at some point. So their first 2 children are named Cain and Abel, both sons. Cain was a tiller of the ground, so a farmer, and Abel was a tender of the flocks. So each son had a differing profession, which, as we'll find out, plays a key part in our story. So the Bible says that Cain and Abel both came and sacrificed to the Lord. Cain brought the first fruits of his crop, and Abel brought a lamb. And they both sacrificed or offered him up as burnt offerings. And the Bible says that God respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect or accept. Let's double check our facts before I just start putting words in God's mouth. It's not exactly the thing you want to be doing. So the NIV version says that the Lord looked with favor on Abel's offering or sacrifice and did not look with favor on Cain's. So needless to say, this made Cain very unhappy. The Bible says that later on, Cain and Abel were in a field, and Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. I think it was Cain in the field with a rock. I just won a game of Clue. All kidding aside, this is a very serious event because now we have our first murder. So Cain kills Abel, his brother, and the Bible then says that God speaks to Cain. He's like, Cain, like, where's your brother? And Cain uses that line that, I don't know if y'all use it, but I kind of tend to use it a lot. Am I my brother's keeper? Cain's trying to lie to God, which we've come to realize that just doesn't work out for people. You can't lie to someone who knows everything. And God doesn't even try to, question Cain's response and get him to tell him the truth. He's like, what have you done? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. The ground's soaking up your brother's blood, which I always thought was kind of gruesome. But, Bible's not all rainbows, butterflies, and waterfalls. There's some nitty-gritty gruesome details in there. And God punishes Cain. He says, because you have done this, the ground will no longer bear fruit for you. You'll be a vagabond the rest of your days. So let's pause for a moment, because what God is doing is He's not killing him, obviously. He's not like, well, you killed your brother, so now you gotta die. But He is severely punishing him for it. What he basically is saying is the profession you've devoted your life to, farming, is no longer going to work for you. The ground will no longer bear fruit. If you till it, nothing will grow for you. To survive, you're going to have to steal things and live on the road for the rest of your life. So Cain's response to this is to throw a tantrum, basically. He basically says, God, you have just condemned me to death, more or less, because now that I can only steal things and live on the road and the ground won't bear fruit for me, anyone who finds me will kill me. So God says, not so. Anyone who kills you will suffer vengeance 7 times greater than what they did to you. And then He puts a mark on Cain's forehead as a sign or a symbol to anyone that finds him and looks at him. So that's basically the end of Cain's story. The rest of chapter 4 is basically just saying that Cain went and got married and had many sons and daughters, and kind of goes through the genealogy in chapter 5 of Cain's genealogy and things like that. And it goes on to say that Adam and Eve had many more sons and daughters than just Cain and Abel. So now we're into chapter 6, and chapter 6 holds a very important story. This story is called the Flood. So the Flood is a catastrophic event that water just covered the entire face of the planet and went over the top of the highest mountain by around 25 feet. The Bible says 15 cubits. So you might be asking yourself, if there was a catastrophic event that covered the entire face of the earth, why are we still here? Well, that is a great question, and one which I have an answer to, because in chapter 6, we find Noah. And the Bible says, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Wait, hold up. What is grace? A rough definition of grace is getting what you don't deserve. So in this case, humanity got a second chance. So the Bible says early on in chapter 6 that the heart of man was wicked, and every intent of his mind and thoughts was just evil, and just towards wicked things, like every human being on earth. And it says God was sorry that He had made man. And then right after that, that's when it says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. It says Noah was a righteous man. He had faith in God. So God appears to Noah and He says, hey, no. So I'm going to have to destroy the earth, and I need you to build a boat. A big boat. This boat is called the Ark. Not the Ark of the Covenant, which we will get into later, but this is just a giant boat called the Ark. So thankfully, Noah was not left to his own devices about how big the Ark was supposed to be, because God also gave him blueprints, dimensions and everything of how big to build it. Because not only was this boat supposed to be big enough for Noah, his 3 sons, their wives, his wife, and so on and so forth, and enough stores to last, indefinite amount of time. But God also wanted Noah to have 2 of every unclean animal and 7 of every clean animal get on the ark. Yeah, it's a big boat. So Noah accepts what he hears from God. He and his family start building a boat. And it takes them 100 years. So I'm going to backpedal just a little bit, because if you read the Bible, and this is explained in the first few chapters, everyone before the flood lived to be like 900 plus years old. Like 500 years old was middle age. Like trying to wrap your head around that is kind of mind-boggling, honestly, because these days we live to like 50s to 90s, in that time frame. Like if you hit 90, you're doing like really good. So it took Noah and his family 100 years to build the ark, and after they had completed it and everything like that, God shows up and he says, hey, in 7 days I'm sending the flood, so get everyone inside. It says they went in the ark, God closed the door, and 7 days later it started raining. And not only did it start raining, the Bible says that the fountains of the deep were opened and the heavens were opened. So you have water coming in from both sides. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. So after the 40 days and 40 nights, the Bible says that God caused a wind to blow across the face of the water, and it started evaporating. The Bible kind of brushes over this next part, but just to give you a general time frame, from the time it started raining to the time they actually get out of the ark is 7 months. 7 months in that. I mean, it's a big boat, but can you imagine having to have all of those animals? It probably wasn't like a lot of room left over for people. So after those 7 months, and there's a process of Noah figuring out if they can actually leave and leave the ark and everything like that, which I'll leave that for you to read. So after they get out of the ark 7 months later, God makes a promise and a covenant with man, not just Noah and his family, but with man in general. And he promises to never destroy the earth through flood again. And his sign for the covenant, which is really interesting, is it's a rainbow. So anytime you see a rainbow, like after it rains, or there's a rainbow is light refracting off of water particles in the air. It's what a rainbow is. But God made that as a sign. He's like, hey, this is my sign to you that I will never flood the earth again. So, which I always thought was pretty cool, especially like when I first learned this in Sunday school growing up. It was like, what? So like anytime it rained, I'd always be like looking out the windows for a rainbow. Yeah, because they're just cool. They're cool. I'm pretty sure there's not a pot of gold at the end, unless you find like a lucky leprechaun. So that is Genesis chapter 6 through 9. That is the flood. Genesis chapter 10 is the genealogy of Noah and his sons, and like how the nations were made off of them. Chapter 11, is a very short chapter, and it's called the Tower of Babel. So the story of the Tower of Babel goes like this. Man got together probably a few hundred years after the flood. They decided that they wanted to build a tower reaching the heavens, lest they be scattered across the face of the earth, which that was exactly what God wanted them to do in the first place, was to scatter. Now the Bible says that up until this point, everyone spoke the exact same language. There was one tongue, which is what enabled them to come together and start to build this tower. So the Bible says that God looked down from heaven and he said, "Oh, here they go again. Will they ever learn?" Just kidding. That's not what he said. He said, well, we have to go in and divide them, because if they do this one thing, there's nothing that they won't be able to do. So God sends his angels down to the earth, and they start mixing up the languages. And so people from people who spoke this one language could understand each other, and so they grouped together, and then they just kind of migrated, and this people group moved, and that right there, that is how people got everywhere in the world, and we all started speaking different languages and dialects and things like that. So that's another like big just history lesson, even if you don't believe that God's the one that did it. Well guys, we've come to the end of our video. Hopefully I did not bore you to death, and I didn't ramble too much. I have a tendency to do that, and I apologize if I did. And my hat, it keeps like falling down, and I look like a villain. Like, let's go. Just kidding, I'm really not a bad guy. So, we're going to end today's video with a bad dad joke. Per usual. Alright, here's one. Why is the letter B very cool? Because it's sitting in the AC. Get it? AC. I'm sure you got that joke, and if you didn't, well, think about it for a little bit. It'll come to you. Thanks, guys, for watching this episode. Please like, subscribe. Please share this video with your friends and family on Instagram, social media, Twitter. I guess I don't know if you can share videos on Twitter. I don't have a Twitter. I do have a Facebook page, Bringer of Light Productions, if you want to go check that out. I don't have a lot on there right now. I'm still kind of in the process of building the page. My dog's walking, if you can hear that. But yeah, thank you so much. And I'll catch you next time on Bringer of Light Productions when we're at the range and we shoot some guns. Because America. This is always the awkward part. I don't know whether I'm supposed to leave, stand, do I do some cool like dance move, or flip my hat, I never know. I'm just going to leave.